Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we'll be going over the top 5 greatest comebacks in NBA Finals history. We're filming this in the midst of the 2024 Finals. After Sunday night, the Celtics won again, taking a 2-0 lead over the Mavericks in this year's Finals. So far it's looked like Dallas isn't even on the same level as Boston. The Celtics team is really deep, and even though Luka Doncic had a 30-point triple-double in Game 2, Mavericks still weren't able to get past the Celtics even when their star, Jason Tatum, was having an off night. Many people think the series is already over. For the sake of wanting to watch more basketball, I hope the Mavericks can mount at least a little bit of a comeback. Today we'll look back at NBA history and maybe see some things that will give Mavericks fans just a little bit of hope that their team isn't done just quite yet. I went through the basketball history books and crunched the numbers, and of the 77 NBA Finals so far, excluding 1-0 deficits, only 6 teams have came back that trailed in a final series. 36 times teams have found themselves down 0-2 like the Mavericks are now, and those teams are just 5-31 to going on and win the series. Before we get into the list, I want to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what a great comeback is.
Okay, sure. Right. So why don't you explain what that is so they can understand?
Yeah,
just explain what that is.
Explain what you think that is.
The 2 biggest criteria I used was how good was that team you came back to beat and how far up against the wall were you pushed before you were able to turn things around. Based off this, I excluded teams like the 21 Bucks, who only lost 2 road games against the Suns before winning 4 straight, or either of the Warriors' comebacks in 15 against the depleted Cavs team, or in 22 against the Celtics team that wasn't quite ready yet. With that being said, let's get into the list. Here are the 5 greatest NBA Finals comebacks of all time. Number 5, the Portland Trail Blazers versus the Philadelphia 76ers in 1977. This was a pretty young Portland Trail Blazers team, as their top 4 scorers, Maurice Lucas, Bill Walton, Lionel Hollins, and Bob Gross, were all 24 years old or younger. They matched up against the Philadelphia 76ers team, who had one of the best players in the league in Dr. J, Julius Erving. This was Dr. J's first year in the NBA after being the best player in the ABA the years prior. The Sixers team also had guys like George McGinnis, Doug Collins, World B. Free, Steve Mix, Henry Bibby. This was a pretty deep Sixers team, and they took the first 2 games against Portland.
They know just how critical it is for Bill Walton and his teammates to get one in the W column.
Bill Walton and the Blazers would step up in a major way as they blew out the 76ers in games 3 and 4 in Portland. Games 5 and 6 were closer, but Walton would come up huge in that closeout game 6 as he would put up 20 points, 23 rebounds, 7 assists, and 8 blocks to lead the Portland Trail Blazers to their one and still only championship in franchise history. At the time of this video, it's only a couple weeks after Bill Walton sadly passed away. Walton dealt with a lot of injuries throughout his career, but you can't deny that those 77 and 78 Blazers teams were awesome to watch. Rest in peace to Bill Walton. Number 4, the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Detroit Pistons in 1988. So the Lakers were the defending champions this year and had a stacked roster, but were also going up against a really good team, the Detroit Pistons. This Lakers team had the big 3 of Magic, Kareem, and Worthy, also guys like Byron Scott, AC Green, Michael Cooper, but they were going up against a Detroit team that had one of the best backcourts of all time in Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, a great front court with Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, Dennis Rodman off the bench. They also still had Adrian Dantley at this point. The Lakers would actually take a 2-1 lead in this series before falling behind, losing games 4 and 5 to Detroit. But what really made this series epic was games 6 and 7. In a closeout situation in Game 6, Pistons star Isaiah Thomas would roll his ankle. He would go on to score 25 points in that third quarter and attempt to close out the Lakers and win his first title. However, late in the game, Kareem would be fouled on his patented skyhook and go to the free throw line down 1 to shoot 2 free throws. Like the legend he is, Kareem would sink both free throws and give the Lakers a 1-point lead, and they would go on to win that game and force a Game 7. After overcoming that legendary Isaiah Thomas performance, the Lakers would take a small lead late in Game 7. Bill Laimbeer would hit a clutch 3 to give the Pistons a chance, but on the last play of the game, people are actually heading onto the court before the Pistons are able to heave the ball down the court for one last second three. The Lakers would take the series in 7 games, and Magic Johnson would get his 5th and final title. Number 3, the Miami Heat versus the San Antonio Spurs 2013. So now we get to the first series I was actually alive for and able to witness. The Miami Heat were the defending champions, coming off a year where they beat Kevin Durant's Oklahoma City Thunder, but it was the Spurs that took a 2-1 series lead. This Spurs team had obviously Tim Duncan still on it, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and a young Kawhi Leonard. Up to this point, Tim Duncan was 4-0 in NBA Finals, and it looked like the Spurs had another chance to get Tim his 5th ring. In Game 3, the Spurs didn't just win, they blew the Heat out of the building. Danny Green hit 7 threes and has scored a game-high 27 points, as the Spurs would win by 37 to take a 2-1 series lead. The Heat would answer back and win Game 4, but San Antonio would take Game 5 once again by double digits and put them 1 win away from winning the championship. Game 6 was one for the ages. You had Mike Miller shooting threes with one shoe on. You had LeBron lose his headband and just ditch it for the rest of the game. With about 30 seconds left in the game, the Heat were down by 5 points. They were bringing out the ropes for the ceremony. LeBron hit a 3, and then obviously it set up the most famous play in NBA history. Bosh got the rebound, kicks it out to Ray Allen in the corner, and the rest is history. The game got sent into overtime, and Miami would come out on top to force a Game 7. Game 7 would be another great game. It was clear coming into this that this would be a legacy-defining game for 2 of the top 10 greatest players in NBA history. LeBron would have some great moments in this game, but it would be back and forth all the way until the 4th quarter. Late in the 4th quarter, Tim Duncan had a shot that he's hit a million times, but for whatever reason just didn't go in, and it signaled that maybe Tim Duncan was getting up there in age. LeBron would come down at the other end and hit one of the biggest shots of his career to give the Heat a 4-point lead, and they would hold on to win the title in 7 games. This was an all-time classic series and definitely helped the legacy of LeBron James in a major way. The Boston Celtics versus the Los Angeles Lakers, 1969. So this was the 6th time in the 1960s that the Boston Celtics and Los Angeles Lakers would play in the NBA Finals. What would make this year different is the Lakers would add Wilt Chamberlain to 2 all-time greats in Elgin Baylor and Jerry West to form the Big Three to compete with Boston. Russell and the Celtics were going for 11 rings in 13 years, which is still amazing even considering the weaker era they played in.
Oh, well, he was being guarded by plumbers and firemen.
This year, Boston wasn't as dominant as previous teams of their dynasty. They were without guys like Bob Cousy, Tommy Heinsohn, Bill Sharman, Casey Jones were all gone, but they still had Russell, John Havlicek, and Sam Jones to lead the way for this 1969 team. The Lakers took games 1 and 2, and Boston won game 3 to answer back, but in game 4 the Celtics were down 1 until Sam Jones hit a last-second shot, barely saving the Celtics from falling behind 3-1. However, the Celtics would once again fall behind, as in Game 5, Jerry West would score 39 points, Wilt Chamberlain would have 31 rebounds, and the Lakers would win by double digits. Boston would defend home court in Game 6, which would set up a Game 7 in Los Angeles to decide the finals. It was a close game throughout, but late in the game, Don Nelson would throw up a circus shot that would prove the basketball gods were on Boston's side that day, and Russell would walk out an 11-time champion off into the sunset. Of all those Celtics-Lakers final series from this decade, this was definitely the closest. Who knows what happens if Sam Jones doesn't hit that shot in Game 4, if the Celtics are able to come back from down 3-1 or not. Jerry West would be named Finals MVP in a loss, but Boston would win the title. Number 1, the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Golden State Warriors 2016. So I think everyone knew this was going to be number 1. It's the only time a team came back from a 3-1 deficit in the NBA Finals, and they did it against a 73-win team, the best regular season record in NBA history. Steph, Clay, and Draymond were all amazing this year, and they also had a lot of great role players that just made for a really well-rounded team. Looking back at this series, I remembered it as an all-time classic, but really only one game was close. The first 6 games of the series were all blowouts, and this included Golden State winning games 1 and 2 on their home court before the series shifted to Cleveland. The Cavs would defend home court in Game 3, but late in Game 4, the Warriors would start to pull away. In the fourth quarter, however, Draymond Green would make a costly mistake. He'd give LeBron a little sack tap after a scuffle and end up picking up a flagrant foul. I think a lot of people remember Draymond getting suspended for this action alone, but it was actually because this was his 4th flagrant foul of the 2016 playoffs, and that constituted a 1-game suspension. But still, Cleveland would have to win Game 5 at Oracle Arena in the Bay, one of the toughest places in the NBA to play. LeBron and Kyrie would both score 41 points in this game. The rest of their team only had 30, but it was enough to get the victory and send the series back to Cleveland for Game 6. In Game 6, LeBron would score 40 plus once again, setting up one of the greatest Game 7s in NBA history. It was down to the wire late. LeBron had that classic block on Iguodala to keep the game tied, as it stayed 89-89 for a long stretch there in the fourth quarter. That is until Kyrie got an isolation moment with Steph Curry and was able to cement his legacy, hitting the biggest shot of his NBA career. This would give Cleveland their first championship ever. They came back from down 3-1 to beat a 73-win team and give LeBron his most improbable championship of his career. With things in the modern game like variance in the three-point shot and just more talent across the league, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another 3-1 comeback in the finals coming up in the recent years. But until then, the 2016 Cavs own the crown as the greatest comeback in NBA Finals history. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you would have had as the top 5 comebacks in NBA Finals history.